afternoon, everyone. I actually see quite a number of attendees still. It's about 180 of you guys still today. So thank you for taking your time to join in today. Also want to thank Exabytes for giving me these 30 minutes to share with everyone what I hope will be useful around how you can use analytics to understand your audiences, and hopefully that you can use this to better address your business goals or objectives. So my name is Dian. I lead everything analytics for Indonesia and Malaysia. I'm very sure most of you in the audience today are either marketers or are working with marketers. And one of the most important aspects of marketing well is in knowing who your customers are. Do you know your target audience, what they are about or what they care about, what motivates them, or what messages resonates with them, or why they even buy your product? And do you know how your target audience aligns with your actual customers? So let's pretend we are making a video game. Who is our target audience? We ask. And a marketer from the past would, in a very stereotypical way, say, I know exactly who that is. That's going to be man 18 to 34. But in the era of data, we can test our hunches. And that's what we have today, right? As it turns out, only about 31% of searches for video games on mobile are men ages 18 to 34. So this really means that if we focus our marketing solely on our target audience, we would miss out on over 2/3 of people who could be interested in our products. And that's a huge opportunity. So in truth, there's often a large divide between people in our target audience and people who are right now interested in our products. And that is okay. Not everyone in our target audience is ready to buy our products right now. Maybe some of them will be ready next month or even next year. On the other hand, there are some people not in our target audience who are ready to buy our products right now. So who are these people with high intent? What makes them tick? Are we missing an important audience? And finally, in the middle of the diagram that you're seeing, that's the intersection between target audience and users interested in our products. And this is where the magic happens. A target audience is merely a mental model of the world or a particular persona that we are operationalizing for customer acquisition. And as we gain more data, the best marketers among us launch and iterate. So we experiment and learn, keep testing. Right? So in truth, there's, where we go? Just missed that, right? And this is where analytics really comes into play, because you can see what types of people you're reaching, right? The who, which is the demographics on the left, and what those people are doing, the what and the intent, all at the same time. So by combining these two allows you to unearth the insights, which leads to the right questions, which ultimately enables you to improve your marketing activities and really your customer experience. Right, okay. So you're probably thinking, sounds good, Dian, but doing this isn't as easy as you make it out to be. And to those of you thinking, yeah, I'm already doing this, a big high five to you, continue doing so. But for those of you who've never thought about this, let's take some time to learn and talk about how do we do this, right? We started with target audience, so now let's talk intent. Of course, it would be nice if every customer who searched for a product landed on your site and immediately purchased the item or all the items. And in the ideal world, that's what we wish for anyway. But we all know that's not quite how it works. In this example, we have Mike, the guy on the left, and we have Mel on the right. So Mike drops a tennis racket into his shopping cart online and then realizes he's late for his doctor's appointment. And he runs out the door. There you go. There goes your conversion. Mel reads reviews for running shoes on your mobile site while she's waiting in line at the airport, and then she puts her phone away as the flight starts boarding. So with that, intent is a spectrum, and users move along it in fits and starts. So the first thing you need to do with your website behavioral data is to find customers with high intent. And you can do this yourself by looking at metrics that likely indicate high intent. For example, has someone visited the same product page 8 times this week? Did someone filter for red shoes in a size 7 on your site but have not buy them? right? These are very strong signals that allows or shows you they are likely interested in your products. But we've also built in some algorithmic ways to find high intent customers, right? Use it through the use of machine learning. Smart list and session quality scores uses machine learning to identify customers that are likely to convert in subsequent visits or future visits. To determine session quality or identify users for a smart remarketing list, machine learning uses dozens of signals. So that includes location, user's device, data, the browser data, referrer, session duration, or how long the user is on the site, and page depth to identify users and sessions that are likely to convert. So this is the fun part. Before taking action, we want to map this back to our target audience. Think about your intent as one axis. For example, how high intent or close to purchase your customers are. And that is the x-axis. And on the y-axis, you can think about your customer segments. This is where your target audiences are. So let's pretend we have two audiences, say intense athletes, which is Mel, the lady earlier, and another audience, the weekend warriors, Mike, the guy. So think about how you might act differently depending on which area of the map a person falls into. Obviously, you want to move users from left to right, from low intent to high intent, but how you do it may vary depending on what segment they're in. So for example, two people might show the same level of intent, but the actions you take to push them from interest to purchase are very different. So for example, maybe intense athletes, where they care a lot more about performance above everything else, versus your average weekend warriors who cares more about comfort and aesthetics or how they look. The question is, do you want to target them both in the same way, or do you want to target them both with a offer on price? Not really, right? So in fact, we found that even the most perfectly targeted marketing campaigns can fall flat if they are not accompanied by the right creative or with the right creative messaging. So once you've identified high intent users, you want to act on that insights. You can then use your own definition of information to create an audience in analytics, and then send that audience anywhere. So we've made it easy to create an audience once and set it over to any of the Google products for remarketing or site optimization. So that is your Google Ads, your Google Search. Some of you who are familiar with Display Video 360 or Search Ads 360, those are other media buying platforms that you can transfer your audiences for you to activate on those audiences later to remarket. And recently, we've taken remarketing one step further. Thanks to the latest updates on our products, you can use the intent and context information available in our analytics tool called Google Analytics to remarket across devices. Right? So that means from users coming from a desktop to a mobile to a tablet. We call that cross-device conversion or cross-device experience. So you don't have to do anything to take advantage of this new feature. This has already been rolled out to all analytics accounts. So today, if you're on a Google Analytics account, this feature is already enabled. So you don't really have to, click a button or do any setups anymore. So when Mike drops a tennis racket into his shopping cart online and then realizes he's late for his doctor's appointment, you can remind him to finish his purchase while he's browsing on his iPhone in the waiting room. Or when Mel reads reviews for running shoes on your mobile site while she takes the train to work, you can remind her about those shoes, those red size 7 shoes that she was browsing when she's at work in the computer in the next morning. So remind her again through remarketing. In fact, 1 in 4 internet users say they start an activity on one device but continue or finish it on another at least once a day. So making cross-device remarketing based on demographics and intent an important and effective tool for all marketers. So a deep understanding of who your customers are and what they're doing is essential to asking the right questions and ultimately creating powerful and relevant marketing. So from analytics, we can identify people from our target audience who aren't buying and people who are buying but not from our target audience, as we saw earlier. So who these people are and why are they doing what they're doing is something that we can also answer and identify. And how do we adjust our mental model to make it closer to reality and ultimately deliver better marketing? Right? So for that, let's look at how you can apply some of these today, immediately, using some of my favorite audience strategies, which I want to go through in the next 10 minutes. So what I've done here is I've mapped the 4 common business objectives that most marketers are very aware of, or the consumer funnel. So you have awareness first, and the business objective for awareness, as we all know, is to raise awareness and visibility of your brand. And then we have on the second stage called consideration. And in consideration, what business cares about is to raise your visitors' engagement. And then we have conversions, to convert users from browsers to customers. And this is one of the most critical stages to get users to actually make a purchase or transactions. And then lastly, loyalty, right? Can we sustain your customers? More importantly, can we retain your loyal customers? And what I've done on the right side is to map some of my favorite audience strategies for each stages of the marketing funnel. So let's go through each of these as I share what it means. So when we think of awareness, here are some of the pre-configured audience definitions you can start looking at in Google Analytics. My key ones would be, to start with these 3 first. Firstly, we have all users. So all users means any visitors who've been to your site or your app. And then the second one, we have new users. So these are any users who have conducted only 1 session on your site or app. Then lastly, we have returning users. Any users who have conducted more than 1 session on your site or app, right? So we look at these 3. This is my top 3 favorite when it comes to awareness. And let's start with the first. So in analytics, you can pre-configure audiences, or you can use one of these pre-configured audiences, as you see on the right, under audience definition in the screenshot. The platform has actually bucketed your users into these 3. In fact, there's a few more as well. But you can see there's all audiences on the right, there's new users on the right, and there's returning users on the right. You can immediately click on one of these to create the audiences, immediately without doing so much work. So these are what we call pre-configured audiences that the analytics team has developed to cover most of your use cases. You can also then choose to create new audiences from scratch, or you can import any of your existing segments to use as the basis for new audiences. Once you develop an audience, it becomes available in the accounts you select, and you can put it to work right away as part of a campaign or experiment. I like to start with these 3 broad strategies because I want to ensure that I'm not showing the same ads to a customer who has recently bought my product or an already existing customer, because that might be really annoying for the customer. I want to also ensure that I'm able to engage with any first-time new users who is in the discovery mode and get him or her to convert through a very compelling offer. So for example, get 20% off for any new users. So you can do this today very quickly using the recommended audiences under audience definition in analytics, right? Choosing one of these 3 recommended audiences. A next step might be to identify the highest converting interest categories. One of the things analytics allows you to do is to understand, for example, that if you look on the right side of the screen grab, is to understand which of your audiences and what kind of attributes your audiences are who are making the highest purchase, right? So in this case, analytics allows you to understand that travel, mobile phone, and investment in market segments collectively represents the users who made the most purchases, whatever that is for your business. So users with these interests are the users on whom you want to focus on a lot more. So in this example, you can see the top 5 are travel, trips to Asia Pacific, in fact. And then you have consumer electronics, very specifically on mobile phones. And then the number 3, we have travel by hotel and accommodations. And then we have financial services, specifically on investment services. Then number 5, we have real estate and residential property. So what this means is, for this advertiser, for this brand, these are the top 5 in-market segments that comprise on attributes to purchase. So if you ask the question, what kind of behavior are most of my buyers, then the answer is these are the top 5 characteristics of your purchasers or your buyers. And therefore, moving forward, you want to take more focus in trying to target more of these users, people who are looking to travel, people who are reading on a travel article, someone who's reading a mobile phone article on phone comparison sites, someone who's looking to browse on which are the best hotels, someone who's looking at financial services and then real estates, right? So let's move on to the next one. The next stage is consideration. When it comes to the consideration stage, here are some of my favorite approaches I like to use to raise my visitor engagement. I like to create a remarketing list based on high engagement matrix. Number 2, based on key page viewers. And number 3, based on insight search. So what this means, let's take a look at what each of these matrices that I just mentioned. Let's start with high engagement visitors. I personally like to cherry pick high engaging visitors because this shows a high level of consideration from the user. So the way I define this is by identifying users who have fulfilled certain conditions when it comes to page views, to bounce rates, and session duration. Because each of these would vary for each business or brand, one way to do it is to look at your overall site's average page views, bounce rates, and sessions, and then use that to establish a baseline average for your own brand. You then want to put a value anywhere between that baseline average and the maximum values as a realistic threshold. So if you look on the right, you can see you can customize your own inputs for what constitutes as a condition for the bounce, for the session duration, or for the page view. Right, so this is one very quick way I can start building audiences based on, for example, I want to have users who went to view 3 pages and more, users who came to my site and stayed for more than 5 minutes, and then made more than 2 bounces. Right, so these forms the conditions where you can say, this is my high value or high engagement visitors. And you can also create another bucket called your mid or low value engagement visitors, and then start to decide, how do I engage? How do I remarket my high value or high engagement visitors differently from my low engagement visitors differently? Moving on to key page viewers, which is the next feature. You can also target audiences based on the pages they visited before. So in this case, you want to take note of visitors who have been to any of your key pages. And that can be very different from each businesses again. You can then build an audience based on the visitors who came to your page. So for example, visited the product list page, went to the product category page, or even went to read more about us, or contact us, or find our location, for example. So this allows you to then reach out and remarket to these users with a different message. Some of you might have experienced this. You have probably seen a high traffic to your product page, but a lower conversion rate than you expect. So you might have to provide those users with additional or more compelling information about the product, or you might have to think about, how can I look at my pricing, if it's competitive or not. So for example, if a product is new to the market, you may have to rely on an ad copy and product details to compensate for the lack of user experience. And if the product information wasn't motivating users when they first saw the page, you probably need to update the copy and product details and then remarket to these users with ads that include the new information. So another one is, if, example, you find that your pricing isn't competitive enough, you can reprice and then run a remarketing campaign that highlights your product's new age in the market. Right? So every time you make an iteration of the ad copy, your product details, or the product page, and you want to refresh this information to those users who came before, this is one way you can do it. So by doing so, we hope that a user who was half or 50% interested in your product now gets re-engaged with the new pricing or a new ad copy or a new product detail, and gets him to be a lot more motivated and interested in coming back to your site and hopefully fulfill that purchase journey. And then we have Insight Searcher. Insight Search shows a very strong purchase intent of your visitors. If a user searches coincide with your product offerings, you have an opportunity to capitalize on that interest. You can follow up with ads that focus on either the specific items users are searching for, or on similar items that maybe viable alternatives to what you're searching for. Right, so in the screenshot, you can see here on the right, you can set the conditions to say, I want site search status to contain anything with people who visit with the site search, to if they're looking for, say, shoes, for example, if they're looking for, let's say, groceries or whatever. So it's up to you to define. And then what it does is it builds an audiences based on the keywords or the search results or the search input that the user has made on your site. Now, let's move to conversion stage. And in analytics, your most important events are called conversions. And we all know this. These are completed activities that are important to your business. Some conversion events are predefined for you, but you can also define your own conversion events as well. So this can be either a completed activity, an online or offline activity that is important to the success of your business. For example, an online activity can be someone signing up for your email newsletter. We call that a goal conversion, or a purchase/transaction. We term that as a transaction in analytics. And a conversion can be a macro conversion or a micro conversion. So don't just see conversion as one conversion. A macro conversion is typically a completed purchase transaction, which is your core goal or your core, core objective of your business. In contrast, a micro conversion is a completed activity, such as an email sign up, that indicates that the user is moving towards a macro conversion, which is a purchase. Right? So these are micro steps before your big conversion steps. And what's cool today is that Google Analytics applies machine learning to your conversion data to determine which users are most likely to convert in subsequent sessions or future sessions. Machine learning uses as we said earlier, the dozens of signals, including location, device, browser, referrer, session duration, page tab, I think the list goes on. But really to use all those signals to identify the audience list and then form to say that these users are most likely to convert in future. Here are some readily available machine learning features in analytics which does that, and I want to share with you. So the first one we have is a conversion probability. The question is, this is very new. I think this came in around last year. What is conversion probability, we may ask? It is really a customized Google Analytics dimension that really helps you to predict the future likelihood of your user converting, as we mentioned earlier. So high conversion probability segments can help you identify valuable users that increase your efficiency or the chances of your conversion. It uses machine learning, as we mentioned earlier. And then what it does is it assigns a score to every user based on their historical behavior and makes a prediction about how likely they are later to convert. And it's called a user based on a 1 to 100 scale. If you look on the right, you can see that conversion probability is with 1, 2 to 5, 6 to 20, 21 to 50, 51 to 100. So you can use this report to analyze your first party data or your visitors to then create buckets of high, medium, and low users. So you can then double down to focus more on high probability score audiences. So what you can do is you can have very bespoke strategies for your high probability score users, and then probably a very different strategy on how you want to reach out to your low probability score users again. Or if you want to just be very direct, I just want to focus on my high probability users, that's fine as well. Now, you might also want to consider remarketing to users who abandon items in your shopping carts. You can build a list for people who add an item to cart and remove them from the list when they make a purchase. You can then build this audience by including users who click add to cart or view the cart page. And you can actually then exclude users who view the order confirmation page. So what you're trying to do here is to say, can I create audiences of people who click add to cart, went to the cart page, but have yet to make an order confirmation. So there's a very strong intent shown by doing that action of adding to cart. And you want to make sure that for some reason they're not purchasing, maybe they don't have a credit card at hand, they rather do the purchase on the desktop and not the mobile phone. So you want to make sure that you re-engage that user again to drive them to fulfill the order confirmation. And if you look on the right, you can see it's a very two-step condition that you just have to apply to do this. Condition 1 is choose event action, which contains add to cart. And then the second filter is to say I want transactions per user more than 0. right? So which means has not made a transaction. And then you can actually apply this to create an audience of users who add to cart but have not transact. The last stage is around loyalty and what we can do to sustain your loyal customers. So one of the key approach I like to take is to evaluate my users based on their lifetime value. The lifetime value feature in analytics lets you understand how valuable different users are to your business based on a lifetime performance as opposed to those just the first purchase. So what this means is it takes into your user across a lifetime, how many times the user has made a purchase, how much value of that purchase is, whether that purchase is a $50 purchase, whether it's a $5 purchase, how frequent that purchase has been, how frequent the user makes on a purchase. Does he buy every other day, or does he buy once every month? And of course, all these factors will be calculated into determining a lifetime value for that particular user. So this is important because it's more profitable for a business to spend more to rightly acquire a potentially high revenue user versus spending less to acquire a lower revenue user in the long run. So some examples of how we can bucket these users based on lifetime value would be, you can assess your lifetime value of users based on revenue per user. You can also assess them based on the sessions durations per user. So how much session a user is actually doing. This is more relevant for publishers who's trying to monetize a site, and sessions per user also for a publisher. And then the last one is I think it's transactions per user. I think that's most businesses will care about, right? So now we have about 3 minutes more. I want to take this time to just quickly go into the UI for those of you who are not familiar with analytics, and then probably just choose one or two examples of how we can create what I mentioned earlier. Okay, so for those of you who are new to analytics, this is Analytics Home. This is the homepage of the platform. For those of you who are very familiar, I hope you can bear with me. I take this as a refresher. Where you want to go to is, you want to go to admin. Under admin, yes, there we go. We want to go to property, and property is aligned to your site or your domain that is attached to this account. And you want to scroll down to go to audience definitions, and you want to go to audiences. This is where I can create all the audiences that we mentioned earlier. So let's take, for example, the first audience that you want to create would be, let me go back up so that we all have a good understanding. Okay, so let's say you want to create an audience based on one of these. Let's take this example, high engagement visitors. Can we create an audience based on users who've, high engagement, based on my high engagement metrics? So the way you do this is go to new audience and go to create new, right? And then we can go to conditions and we can search for page views. And we can say all options or duration, session duration. Okay, and it's up to you then to define if you want to have this condition of users being served more than 3 pages, a duration of more than, let's say, more than 2 minutes, and then a bounce of more than, say, 2, for example. Right. So once you input your conditions, the next thing you do is to click apply. You can see that these audiences, once they're created, you can push these audiences to any of your Google products for you to start targeting these audiences. You can name this high engagement. Okay, so that's one way that's how we create the high engagement. Let's choose one more example in the interest of time. Let's say we want to choose, let's go to conversion. This is interesting. Let's choose how can we create an audience based on people who add to cart but not purchase, right? So let's take this as an example. Same thing, back to audiences, go to new audience. My home internet is really slow, so pardon me. New, and go to conditions. right? We call this event actions, and then I think it's called add to cart. There we go. And then we say, and transactions mean, I think it's called transactions. There we go, transactions. Okay, before this, you want to make sure that you change the users because you want to create an audience based on a particular user rather than a session. So this user has add to cart but has not made a transaction. Therefore, I want to choose this to 0. Right? Apply. Same thing. You can call this add to cart. Add to cart users. There you go. Right. So let me just refresh my screen. Okay. So I hope that quick demo gives you a glimpse of how quick we can create the audience strategies we talked about earlier. Here's a recap of what we went through. When we think of awareness, we want to look at all users, returning users, high value, affinity, and e-market users, and then try to create audiences of those users. When you think of consideration, we want to look at high engagement visitors, people who have been to your key page or product page, for example, and the people who have made an insight search and then try to create audiences of these users. When we talk about or when we think about conversion, we want to look at conversion probability and looking at users who at the shopping cart abandoners. And lastly, when we think about loyalty, we want to look at users who have high lifetime value or who have made multiple purchases, and then create a segment of create an audience base of these users and try to target them. So if you'd like to learn more on analytics, I would really suggest you to click on this link. It's a bit long, but you can actually just type Google, Analytics Academy Google in Google, and you can see a page like this appearing. So we have a free analytics online course that's about for anyone. For beginners, you can see there's a beginner track all the way to power users, where we talk about how you can use analytics with BigQuery and machine learning. It's quite comprehensive and gives you a fundamental understanding on anything and everything in analytics. So with that, I hope this has been very useful. And thank you once again for your time.
It has, and thank you. Sorry, I just got choked right there. Right at the same time, apparently. But okay, to everyone who is watching, let's give him a big virtual round of applause. Now, Dian, we actually have some questions here for you.
Sure.
So the first one is from Jackie. Now, Jackie's question is, where can I find the audience definition?
So let me, can I share my screen quickly? So let me share my screen again. Right, so if you're in Google Analytics, and the first page you would see would be home. Can you see my screen, Lori?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool. Right, so this is your first page when you log in. Where you want to go is to go to admin on the bottom left. And then under property, you have to scroll down a little bit. You can see audience definitions, and then you can click on audiences. You can ignore this because I was doing some stuff earlier, but yes, this is where you create the audience definitions that we spoke about earlier. There you go.
All right. Okay, Jackie, I hope that answers your question. Our next question is by Camila Chi. The creation of these various audiences is a list, the audience list is a one-time action, or does it have to be refreshed every few months?
You just have to do it once, and it will auto-populate based on the conditions that you already set. So you don't really have to, I guess, refresh it every other week or every other month. So that becomes quite useful.
Okay, and then we have a couple more here. Let's see. The audience list, does it capture their email, or does Google create a lookalike audience for ad purposes?
We don't capture email, particularly because of GDPR, the global data privacy regulation reasons. So if you guys heard about all these data compliance in the recent years, it doesn't allow asked to collect what we call PI data, or personally identifiable information. That is your name, your age, your ID number, and address, and so forth. So we've been very, very limited in that sense to be able to collect things like email and so forth. Yeah, but if you do have email, one of the ways we don't collect, but you can actually upload your email into Google Ads to do some matching. So, for example, there are clients who have online store and offline store, and sometimes they want to match on much of their offline transaction. They want to tie back the offline transaction into their online campaign activities. An example of a car automotive, right? You see a YouTube ad online of car, but you go to the offline store to make a purchase. Can they actually match and say that, oh, this user came to the store because they saw the YouTube ad? And the way they do it is by looking at using the email to match that. So the user went to the online store, the user went to the offline store, showroom, bought a car, shared the email, and therefore we match the email to the user who actually has a YouTube, saw that YouTube account or saw that YouTube ad earlier, 2 weeks earlier. That's one way we do it. So it's for matching, but yeah. So case by case.
Okay. Our next question is from Mahindran. Hi, Dian. I have used Google Analytics before for a company website. Can you give a simple briefing about what is attribution beta in Google Analytics?
Mahindran, I think this has been quite some time, right? I guess because attribution beta has been deprecated as a feature. We used to have a standalone feature called attribution. So now that has been, I guess, baked into Google Analytics already. So you are able to do attribution reports, get attribution insights through analytics itself already. You don't need to, I guess you don't have. So let me share my screen with you instead of just talking around.
Sure.
Okay, let's go back to Google Analytics. You can see my screen, Maureen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Right, something's not right here. Let me cancel this. Right, Mahendran, you can see on the left here, there is attribution here, right? So in the past, attribution used to be a separate feature. So we actually built this in, and yeah, you actually can have all the features of attribution here. It's basically trying to answer the question marketers have today on attribution. Most marketers are still looking at what we call a last click attribution model. For those of you who are new to this, it really means that if a user sees a display ad, sees a video ad, and then saw a search ad, and then makes a conversion, the last click attribution means, which is very old school, and a lot of people are still doing this, means that search gets the credit, and display and video won't get the credit at all, which is a bit unfair because for all we know, display and video has been very useful at driving the user down the funnel, and therefore the user is aware of the product and therefore make a search and therefore make a purchase. So attribution allows you to understand, can we look beyond that last click and to understand how much of these other touch points are contributing before the search or before the conversion, right?
Right. Okay. Let's see. We have time for. Actually, we can do all the questions if it stays at 7 questions here. Our next one is from Lai Heng. And the question is, how come there is no audience builder on my Google Analytics?
Are you looking at no audience builder on your Google Analytics? Maybe you have to enable, is that the option there? And then there's a, so sometimes they ask you to, because of permission reasons, you might not be able to. Is that the case, or are you not saying anything at all?
Maybe Lai Heng, you can elaborate on this in the chat box, and Dian will get back to you as soon as he can. Our next question is by Jackie once more. What is the difference between analytics and Search Console?
Search Console would be, I guess, not too familiar, honestly, Search Console. When we talk about analytics, it's not, I guess, specific to any channel, any marketing channel, right? It doesn't, it's not an analytical or a reporting tool only for search, for example. It is, I guess, even channel agnostic. So, or what we call even media agnostic. So we are compatible in the sense that we allow tracking across whether it's a Google media, whether it's a Google channel, whether it's a non-Google channel, whether it's an app, and so forth. So in that sense, pretty much unbiased, right? So as long as you're on any channel, we should be able to give you insights and create reports of those insights. Whereas I would assume Search Console would be specific for search. So,
one certain thing.
One certain thing.
Okay, so our next question is by Susan. I am changing my email server to Google. Will my website be affected?
Will server to Google, will website be affected? I'm not too sure as well it is.
It's okay. Okay.
I'm not too sure, Susan. I think it's more of an infrastructure question. We should ask your webmaster actually. Yeah. Sorry, I can't answer that question. I'm not too sure on that. Yeah.
It's all right. Okay, I think let's do one last one.
Okay.
This one is from Han Yi. There is free and paid Google Analytics. Are the features you showed us available in the free version?
Yes, Yi-chan, you are a good question. So yes, most of what I showed earlier is available in the free version. Earlier you saw, okay, let me just share with you again quickly, one last time. So where it's different is you saw earlier when I create an audience. Let's say creating an audience again. Move this aside. Let's say I'm creating a session. Let's say, for example, I've created this. Let's modify minutes. Okay, so over here, eligibility is saying that you can share these audiences to any of the Google products. Well, for the free analytics free, you can share to everything minus display video 360, anything with the 360 at the back. So display video 360 is your what we call the enterprise version of your Google Ads display or video. Then we also have something called Optimize 360. This is something that helps you to optimize your site, your on-site. So different users with different attributes who come to your website will see different things on your website. Minus this thing, everything else you can share your audiences to. So you can share to Google Ads, you can share to everything else minus Google Display and Video 360.
So,
I hope that answers the question.
All right, so that's all the time we have for today. Dian, thank you so much for joining us and for making such an intricate, detailed presentation, and you made it so fun and intriguing. And I think you really gave it your all. And I think everyone who's watching here, all 132 people on Zoom, has actually learned something from your presentation. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys. Salam Idul Fitri in advance, yeah, everyone.
Okay.
Okay,
and selamat berbuka puasa later. Thanks, Dian.
Bye.
Bye.
Exabytes. Grow your business online.